I'm just going to do a quick video about hybrid picking and how to work it into some blues playing. A lot of people think of hybrid picking as pretty much a country technique, which, I mean, it's really great for like that kind of stuff, kind of banjo style stuff. But it's really good in a lot of other contexts, and I mean, it's so embedded in my style of playing now that I don't even know I'm doing it. But what makes it so great is that getting across strings, it makes it a lot easier. So let's just take like a typical, or that standard Stevie Ray riff that I'm sure a million of us have learned, which is like, right, or that classic blues, kind of minor pentatonic blues scale riff. And the challenge with that in playing that quickly is that you're having to go across three strings, right? And alternate picking is tough when you're going across strings like that, because what'll happen is you're going to have to pick, and then you might have to down pick on one string, you might have to then lift your pick up over the next string to up pick on it, and then you've got a long distance to go to the next one. So it's a pretty inefficient way of getting across strings, whereas having those fingers available is really helpful. So for that, like in particular, let's take this one, the all right. The first part of that is just that Chuck Berry, right? So you're picking G, B, and then E strings. I'm tuned to half step flat in case you're trying to play along. So that first part, if you were to alternate pick it, is pretty tough to get up to any kind of decent speed. What I do with that one is I take the first two strings and I do a sweep across that with a down pick. So down across both. And then I grab with usually my ring finger. Use whatever finger is comfy for you for the E string. So it ends up being right, down, down, and then a pick on the finger. So you could practice that just muted if you wanted, but that's the first move, which is right. It's a sweep across two and then a pick. Excuse me. The next move is coming back down off that E string. So, right. So what I do for that is after the picked note with my finger on the E string, I actually do an up pick with the pick. So what that does is, and that's if you're going back down. So you're going sweep, pick with the finger, and then after that one, your next one move is going to be up pick with the pick. So if you want to practice that as kind of a forward and backward roll, which is what they would call it in banjo picking, a forward roll, I mean, you can do it pick, finger, finger. So we pick, middle finger, ring finger. I sweep the pick and then just use the ring finger, just how I do it. You can practice that without any notes just by going down, down, finger, up, right? Down, down. So I'm going down, down, finger, up, and then that returns me back to the G string. So it's right. So once again, that lick kind of is right. I've done a forward roll and then pull off. Now, if I'm headed back to the E, if I'm going this direction with the pick, I'll usually use a down pick, right? I'm cognizant of which direction I'm headed next. So it's a forward roll. I might do down, like a sweep, forward roll, followed by a down pick on the B string because I'm going to the E next. If I'm heading back down and going to the G, I'll probably do an up pick, right? Right, so down because I'm going to the E, or up because I'm going down to the G. So a great way to start getting this under your fingers is pick licks that you already know that cross three strings, and start using the forward roll and backward roll to get across them. Also, I suggest you remove the left hand when you just are getting the mechanic down on your right hand, and start slow. Just mute the strings and start that forward roll. Right. Once you can get that, get the backward roll, and then start connecting them. And then the other thing I would suggest too is that you practice them with, if it's a grouping of three, you're practicing a forward roll, which is three notes. Try practicing it over a rhythmic subdivision that is not 3, because if you practice a 3-note grouping as a triplet, you'll start bunching it, right? You'll start playing like, that's an exaggeration, but you will start bunching it because only the first note is landing on a downbeat when you're counting. And that tends to make you kind of favor a bias towards that being your reference note and that note being on, and the other ones kind of get short shrift as far as rhythm goes. So I would practice a 3-note pattern as 16th notes or 8th notes, but something that's a subdivision of 4, so that the downbeat moves across the pattern, rather than practicing as a triplet. Okay, so if it's a 3-note grouping, practice it in a rhythmic subdivision of 4. If it's a 4-note grouping, practice it in a rhythmic subdivision of 3. But you always want to try that mismatch, because that'll expose where your kind of clumping and bunching is happening in those patterns. Once you get the right hand down, then take it and start applying it to some licks that you already know that cross those strings. And like I said, Steve Ray Vaughan's a great place to start, because he did so much of that. So much of his stuff is playing first position pentatonic stuff that crosses over 3 strings, and he does that kind of Chuck Berry thing, as I call it all the time. He does that so much. Other great hybrid pickers you can get into too. Danny Gatton's the one that really kind of turned me on to hybrid picking, and he's just insane how good his right hand technique was. But tons of players do it, and when you start watching, you'll realize that so many players that you would never associate as hybrid pickers do a lot of that hybrid picking, because it's just such a handy way to grab notes without having to travel to pick so far across the strings. One other question people always have about hybrid picking is how long to keep your nails on your picking hand. And there's all kinds of different answers for that, and it'll really boil down to what works for you. So I'll just give you my 2 cents on it. Because there's guys that have really long nails, like really long nails. And a lot of classical players play that way. And I mean, Johnny Hyland is an example of an electric player that has pretty long nails, and I think he uses, like, all those guys I think use like fake glue-on nails. And I know other people will paint on like a strengthener on their nail. My style, personally, I don't use the nail a lot. I've gone shorter and shorter as kind of the years go on. It only takes one time kind of tearing a nail on a gig where you realize, like, man, if you do that and your technique relies on it, you're basically screwed for the night and the next few nights. But I also play pretty hard, and I like to snap and pop the strings. I pull the strings up and snap them against the frets to get kind of a poppy sound. So that doesn't really work with nails. Nails aren't that strong. So I let the flesh of my fingertip do most of the work, and the nail is just kind of there as a reinforcement there, if that makes any sense, or to provide a little bit of an edge, but there's not much nail contact going on at all. And I also find that like nail hitting a string, I don't like that sound as much as a flesh plucking it. So that's just my 2 cents, and I don't find it really slows me down at all. Eventually, you'll build up calluses. When you first start, it's going to hurt. Your tips are going to hurt, just like when you started playing on your left hand down here on the frets. It's the same thing, flesh rubbing against strings, it's going to hurt. But you'll build up calluses eventually, and that shouldn't be a problem. And as your fingertips harden, it'll also make it easier, and you'll kind of have less of a need for the nail because you've got a bit of a harder tip to work with there. So it's like so many other things. The more you do it, the better you're going to get at it, right? So you just kind of have to plod ahead with it, keep working on it, and eventually it's going to come to you. But I definitely recommend it. It's one of the most helpful techniques I've ever come across in guitar playing, is being able to use pick and fingers on the right hand. So good luck.